What I wanted to talk about here with this next article, there's a whole article about an Airdrie family entering a net zero life here. And they talk about it. They go through all the technology. This is clearly just like a borderline environmental propaganda. But they talk about not wanting their house to be left behind when everything goes net zero in 2035. That how no, I want to get. Let's say I want to get solar panels because I want to bring my costs down, and the technology is starting to get there. That's a perfectly sensible thing for a person to do if you're off grid and you have trouble getting access. That all
Sure.
makes sense. But this is just an agendaed push to be like, you need to reduce your impact to nothing. And you look at the people pushing it who are jet setting all over the world. We've talked about this ad nauseum, but this is not a news story, but it is a news story because the government wants it to be.
Right. And this is not something that normal people could do.
No.
When I say normal people, I mean people who, like me, are averse to government handouts. So
Yeah.
they say, also, by the way, that is, a couple decade old house that you see in any older neighborhood in Alberta, that sort of split level bungalow. But man, are they making that place look ugly? Like, like digging up the front yard, putting in geothermal. I can't wait till the neighbors complain about the solar panels leaching into their gardens. They say they're helping to produce a documentary about the upcoming building code changes in Canada, and that inspired her own family to get ahead and begin energy efficient retrofits. These projects have been self-funded. Okay. Self-funded means something else than what the next phrase is. Yeah. Self-funded through grants and loans. So is it self-funded or are you getting money from the government? Which one is it, sister? But also winning the prize money would be a welcome help. So they're getting loans from the government. They're getting probably low interest loans from the government. They're getting grants from the government and then simultaneously claiming that this is self-funded. No, lady, we're funding it. Yeah. We're funding your excursion into disastrous energy poverty because you know what? Airdrie is not a warm place. Yes, it is warmer than where I live. Being a few hours south, but it's not warm. It gets a lot of snow. It gets -40. I like you. I'm pro people living their life however they want to live it. I just don't want to pay for it. And I'm also pro people learning things the hard way when there are other people who already told them the easy way. And so, like, look, if you got to learn this your way, go ahead. And I think that's about to happen.
Well, and the other thing too here is like, you said that normal people, quote unquote, can't afford this because they're not willing to take those grants. But the other issue is legitimately normal people can't afford this. Even if you're getting grants and loans and whatever it may be, you're talking about $1,000 and like thousands of dollars to get these things going, even with those sort of grants, loans, whatever it may be. And lots of people are just struggling to get by month to month right now, and more people under this conservative or this liberal government rather are struggling to get by. So this is certainly a luxury that most people can't afford, even with all of that. But it's the fact that this is being pushed. I don't care. It's kind of a puff piece. Sometimes places do that, but it's part of an agenda. All the temperatures being read, stories about going net zero so your house isn't left behind. Like your house is going to suddenly lose value when a government policy comes in. Like, what are they going to do? Seize your houses? Probably. I wouldn't be surprised. But or they'll force you to do the work. Yeah, exactly. So anyways, that is what it is. On the other side, the opposite side of this, there is some sensible governance coming out of Alberta, and this is nice. It's nice to see provinces in the black. Strong and prudent fiscal management continues to steer Alberta's economy in the right direction. The province's surplus for 2023-2024 is now projected to be higher than first estimated at $2.4 billion. Our UCP government will continue to pay down debt, which is great because for folks who don't know, we're paying a lot of money on interest, and every time you pay down a chunk of that debt, you're actually saving money. For folks who understand basic economics, that'll be pretty straightforward. For liberals, I'll send you a 101 so you can understand that a little bit better. Saving for the future, it's great. We know that there was the big heritage fund and all that sort of stuff set aside. So having more money from natural resources going into those types of things for the future is great. and to ensure that Albertans have access to world-class social programs. Folks out there don't always realize this, but part of the reason that Calgary is often considered a cultural hub, despite what you might think, is because of these private industries, private investments, lots of money coming in from these energy resources. So when you go to the ballet or that art gallery or whatever it may be that you like to do, even if it seems at odds or very far away from oil, well, oil paid for it in one way or another, energy paid for it in this province. So much of what you enjoy, even the roads, public buildings, whatever, it comes from these industries. Great to see a government that's actually paying off some of those debts and working in the right direction. What's it like to have a government with a couple years in the black, Sheila?
It's going to take a long time for the UCP to undo the damage of the progressive conservative government before them, but also the NDP, who just ballooned the debt here in Alberta. We used to have a law, and we will have, under Ralph Klein, because we were debt free under Ralph Klein. He held up that sign that said paid in full. Yeah. And it was illegal to debt spend in Alberta. And then the PCs repealed that after Ralph Klein was gone. And that caused catastrophic damage because it allowed the NDP to spend out of control. And now Danielle Smith is trying to undo that damage and bring us, again, very Ralph Klein-y of her. And I hope she never quits. Right now, under the province's fiscal framework, they're required to put at least half of any budgetary surplus back into debt repayment. But there's another thing. It's the Taxpayer Protection Act in Alberta. So not only do the province is required to put half of any budgetary surplus back onto the debt to pay it down. They've mandated themselves to do that. They've tied their own hands so that they can't spend, because they understand the nature of government is to spend and grow. But the Taxpayer Protection Act requires our government, because for those people who, again, my condolences if you're living in another province, but we don't have a provincial sales tax here. And we likely never will, because our province has mandated itself to go to referendum before they institute a sales tax. And earlier in the year, the UCP promised to expand that Taxpayer Protection Act so that they would also have to do the same thing before they raised personal or business taxes in this province. So they basically tied their hands and said, if we do this, we have to get the consent of the people, knowing full well the people are going to be against tax hikes, which means that they've basically mandated themselves to cut government wherever they can so that they never end up in that place. So again, sorry about everybody else, but things are right coming here in Alberta for once.
Things are coming up Millhouse. Really quickly, going to get through a couple stories here. We talked about this already, but here's just another tweet that is put out with the great black and white photo. This almost looks like a graphic we would do. I wonder where they're getting it. But Danielle Smith says, Ottawa must respect the needs of Albertans and all Canadians who need affordable and reliable electricity. Our province will chart a responsible path forward based upon technology and innovation to get us to carbon neutrality by 2050. It's time for the Liberal government to put common sense ahead of extreme ideology. Just love still calling out, putting them on blast, putting that picture up there. We have governments that, even under Jason Kenney, but we've got politicians, conservative politicians, who are very easy to bully. And I think it, again, extends back to that Harper thing where he's effectively made to look a villain. Since that, all conservatives have been kind of kowtowing, placating, quiet. Let's just not ruffle things, and hopefully people come to their common senses. And we're seeing politicians now saying no. And I love this. Just don't test our resolve. Don't Ottawa my Alberta. That's from my shirt, not from her quote. But don't test our resolve. Testing Albertans' resolve, generally a bad thing to do. Laurie Goldstein weighing in on this too, and it's absolutely great. This was the summary, effectively, of Guilbeault's engagements. Stephen Guilbeault on the environment: Alberta bad, Saskatchewan bad, China good. Basically, you can be the biggest polluter in the world by far, have the worst human rights standards, the worst environmental standards, everything. But if you sort of bend the knee and agree to progressive narratives, at least on the public stage, or if you're the Chinese government, you get a free pass. Everyone else is a villain and very, very bad. That's the Liberal government in a nutshell. China good, everyone else that dares question them bad, correct?
100%. That takes us to Laurie's next tweet.
Yeah.
Coal was Canada's top export category by value to China in the first 6 months of 2022, continuing its dramatic growth from quarter one as an export category to China. So I can't use the coal in my province that
Yeah.
just crumbles out of the ground everywhere because there's so much of it. We have 800 years of the cleanest burning coal on the planet here under our feet in Alberta, and we can't use it, but we could send it to China where they can burn it for thermogenic electricity production. And they will do it without the emission standards that we have here in Alberta. And that's perfectly fine for this government because
and
climate change.
the issue is they don't want it's probably coming from elsewhere, the stuff they're selling to China. They don't want it coming from here specifically. It's okay if it comes from everywhere else. It's just they don't want those uppity Western provinces talking back. So, but yeah, this is rich. This government selling the most coal to the greatest producer, contributing in a meaningful way. Not just that, but also hauling it over the ocean instead of just doing it locally. Unbelievable, but more glaring hypocrisy.
Canadians are grappling with news blackouts on social media due to the Justin Trudeau Liberal government's Bill C-18. This new piece of legislation demands that social media platforms pay the government for news shared by users, which is an inconceivable task for companies like Meta and Google. So, as a result, they have decided to preemptively block all Canadian news content, including ours at Rebel News. In response to this, we have since teamed up with VPN provider Private Internet Access to ensure that you can continue to access all of our content across a broad range of platforms while also maintaining your privacy. For only $2 a month, you can bypass Trudeau's new censorship laws while you safeguard freedom of speech and continue to get the news that matters to you the most. Visit piavpn.com/rebelnews to take advantage of the 84% discount and 4 months free. As a bonus, PIA has all of its servers located in the United States, not China, and they automatically delete user data from their servers to avoid leaks and government subpoenas for information phishing expeditions. Don't delay. Head over to piavpn.com/rebelnews to stay up to date on the news in Canada and protect your access to it. Don't delay. You don't want to be left behind.